Alina? unmute. Down arrow. Yeah. So you can do speakers there too. You can select speakers and microphone there. So if they can't hear you, then you change your microphone. And if you can't hear them, then you change your default. But who was it you couldn't hear before?
The people who logged in.
All of them?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can click there. So these are your speakers, and you can get to it by clicking the down video as well. But here are your speakers.
Mm-hmm.
So choose one. I mean, and you're just gonna have. I mean, it should. I don't know why this one doesn't set it up.
Yeah. Okay. And before you leave, just make sure the volume's turned down in case it's like records through the whole weekend or whatever, like it did last time.
Oh, I have it on mute downstairs in the video. That's why I'm this black blob here.
Okay, but it's streaming if someone were to log in right now.
Yeah, if you look on your phone and look on it's right now it's streaming, and it's just this picture right now that's streaming.
They can't hear me.
No, well they can right now because we're on mute. Yeah.
I must say that Zoom is a Chinese
Zoom is?
project.
Oh, interesting.
I didn't know that.
Okay.
Interesting, yeah.
I know TikTok is.
I know TikTok is.
Yeah, yeah.
But Zoom, well, when you think
Interesting.
of how many computers that's.
Yeah, wow,
If
interesting.
you have bad intentions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, wow. Was not aware of that.
Okay.
We have not started.
No, we're
No.
But I think, this, we might have to play
Extra
around
copy of
with
the
it.
agenda.
Yeah, and here's some copies of the draft minutes as well.
Looks like it's picking you up.
Yeah, and then the question
I
is,
believe there's a test function too. You can, maybe, oh, this is, well, yeah. Sorry, I've been bouncing between Teams and Zoom and WebEx for different meetings.
hey Russell,
Sorry.
can you hear me? If you can,
Oh, Russell's muted, so.
I think. I think that's on him though,
If you
right?
go up to the top right of his.
I can hear you.
Oh, now he is.
Yeah.
Okay, Russell, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I had to do it virtually. I'm on dad duty today.
Is the volume turned up?
Yeah, and this is where,
Yep, so, okay, so we have volume.
settings, I think it needs to be,
Um,
is it the IFC?
yep.
This one?
Mhm.
Okay. Hey Russell, try talking again if you can hear me.
I can hear you guys just fine.
It looks like he's trying to talk, doesn't it? Yeah, please.
I am talking. Sounds like you guys can't hear me.
I think. Yeah,
Can you try again, Russell?
Oh, there we go. Russell?
you can hear us?
I can hear you guys.
There we
Okay.
go.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Excellent.
Yay, okay, we haven't started yet, but, that's wonderful.
All right.
Hi.
I'm here. I'm just
Hey, Tanner.
wife's at work today, so I had to do virtually while I make dinner for the kids.
That's all right. Just happy to see you. Looks like we have a quorum, but I know Shannon Isles is coming, so I'll just wait a minute still.
Shannon,
Isles.
Shannon Knight,
Shannon is no longer on
she's not, okay,
the committee.
okay,
We have a new member who we'll introduce at some point along the way.
wow,
And then Josh Cheney is out of town, so.
okay.
Here's a copy of minutes. We usually just take a look at these. I don't know if you had a chance to read them prior. We are live streaming on YouTube, so be aware of that. And John, do you want me to hand out anything?
I just have some handouts here,
Okay.
postcards that I can talk about when I speak.
Waterfront project,
Yep,
what's that?
we're gonna talk about it. Might involve water.
This is for their hands to put the water in the front instead of the back,
Exactly.
so we're moving all that to
Yep.
the other side.
Yeah, we're gonna flip it around.
That's fantastic.
No, well, we're working on getting increasing access down there. So,
I'm, you know.
I know.
How did the thing go on Saturday?
It went very well,
That's
actually. It
awesome.
went very well. We
I
had,
really wanted to go.
yeah, we counted on our clicker 91 people, and we know a lot more came in because
Yeah.
we couldn't keep track of everyone. Some people came 45 minutes early, and some people lingered, and but it was over 100 people. So I know I saw some of you guys there.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
it was nice.
That's awesome.
It was nice.
I'm doing a seminar for a board game,
Oh, nice.
for the month,
Mhm.
every Saturday,
Okay.
so it's,
Yeah.
but it's been a-
That's why we have a website. and whatnot as well, so people can participate different ways, and,
Is the
yeah,
new site up yet?
it is up actually,
Oh,
yes.
And so
Yeah,
you guys are starting to.
yeah, it's westlandwaterfrontproject.com, and then I have a QR code here as well,
Yeah,
just to help people get there.
that's really great. Congratulations.
Yeah.
I know, Chris and everyone have been fighting
Yeah.
a bit to get that up.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, it's not something we do very often, but yeah, no, it's good, we're starting to get feedback there, and, yeah, okay.
Well, maybe we'll just get started. Okay. I'll go ahead and record. Okay, good evening. This is the City of West Lynn's Economic Development Committee. It's Thursday, March 14th, 2024. We will do a quick roll call. How about that? I will lead the charge. Tanner Woody.
So
Present. Josh Carter.
here.
Heather Jones, not here yet. Peter Ryder.
Glad to.
Shannon Eilis is not here yet, but might join us. Russell Williams, can you say hello?
Here.
And then we have Councilor Lou Groner.
Hello.
And I'm Alina Schnarr, the Business Support and Economic Development Coordinator for the City of West Lynn. And then we have a guest presenter, John Floyd, Senior Planner. So why don't we get going? We'll wait for the chair to arrive and I'll pass it over to her when she shows up. It looks like we don't have any members of the public here to make comments, so why don't we just jump right into you, John, and then we can deal with the other
Okay,
details later.
great, that sounds
You're okay
good.
with that?
I'm
I'm
okay
gonna
with that.
help facilitate some shared PowerPoint presentation materials. And we'll just have a good time. So welcome, everybody, and thanks for being here.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I can drive if that would be easier.
Yeah, that might be easier, actually,
Okay.
since you're used to it. And then
Perfect.
there
Okay.
is often a connectivity issue from that distance, and so if there is, you can hop on here.
Okay. Great. Well, I will get this going, and while I do that, just again, just to be clear, I'm John Floyd. I'm the person in the planning department assigned to the waterfront project, and make sure that our people online can see this.
And Shannon Eilis is joining us now. Just do a roll call, Shannon. Nice to see you.
Okay, can everyone see the PowerPoint on screen, Russell?
Yep, I can see it.
Great, okay. So, yeah, so I'm here tonight to talk about the waterfront project. This is something that's been going on in various iterations for a number of years. So right now we are, well, actually, I'll sort of get into this here. Well, I'll talk about the project area first before getting into where we're at. So what do we mean when we're talking about the waterfront? I mean, West Lynn has a long sort of shoreline along both the Willamette and Tualatin rivers. The area that we're talking about, it's just under 300 acres. It's essentially the land between I-205 and the Willamette River. It's bounded on the north by I-205 where it crosses the river over to Oregon City, and then in the south at 7th Street where the old Blue Heron Pond is located, at the where Fulp Street curves, you know, and smells funny now and then. So it's a fairly as it stands today, it's a fairly isolated part of the city. It's, you know, we have the second largest waterfall in the country by volume, and it's really hard to see. A lot of people don't even know it's there. I've met people visiting in town who had no idea there was a waterfall, and they were Oregon residents. So it's I think it's a tragedy that we hope to sort of change. This area has deep roots as a center of culture and commerce, not just to sort of the sort of post-settlement era of the 1840s and 1850s, but multiple Native American tribes, you know, consider this area a center of identity and commerce and sustenance. And so as part of this project, we are coordinating with 5 tribal nations on this project. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. So in terms of existing conditions, not only is it isolated by I-205 and steep topography and wetlands and things like that. It also sort of reflects the past economics of the city, which some are still very much present, but some are less relevant to 2024. Right now, we have the largest and oldest private employer in the city. So it's the paper mill. Its current iteration is a few years old, but a paper mill's been there for over 100 years down on Moores Island. Also the site of Linn City, the original first European settlement here. There's also the PGE hydroelectric plant. I think going from memory, it serves about 11,000 homes. It's not the biggest facility that PGE operates, but it's certainly a very prestigious one for them. And it's a beautiful plant, and it's also there on Moores Island. With that comes a lot of legacy infrastructure. A lot of the roadway, a lot of the area doesn't have sidewalks. It has substandard streets. It's hard to get to. We have a lot of large parking lots. One place in particular that's visible, Historic City Hall is down there. That's legacy infrastructure. We're actually currently renovating the hall to be taken over by a cultural and tourism nonprofit, and that work is currently underway. But there's also a giant parking field behind that that's only used for semi-trailer storage. Also, access to the island is very difficult down where the mill is. The only vehicle access is down to Wood Road, and there's one narrow bridge to get to the island. So any future redevelopment of the island, if and when the mill closes, access is the #1 challenge. Only because when it's developed, riverine transportation was really the way that people got around, and now we get around in cars, and it's just different. So, but with those constraints also comes a lot of opportunity as well. One last thing I wanted to point out is that this project is not a master plan, because a master plan implies ownership and control. The city only owns really 3 things down here. We own West Bridge Park, just by the 205 bridge there. We own Historic City Hall, and we own the public right-of-ways. Everything else is largely in private hands. Most of this area is actually owned and controlled by PGE. They're the dominant landowner. And then at the northern and southern ends, there's some other landowners there as well. One thing I do want to say here is that on the map, the purple area largely describes the planning area. That purple denotes industrial zoning. And so that made sense 40 years ago when the current zoning map was adopted back in the early 80s. But that zoning really limits what you can do, because it's intended to put operations and businesses where you don't want people around because they smell bad or they're dangerous. Now that zoning prevents us from, you can't put a park in the industrial zone. You can't put offices, you can't put breweries or coffee shops or restaurants. So there is some commercial zoning at the very northern end by the bridgehead, but it's a relatively small area and doesn't allow things like mixed use, which is what we want. So again, this project is right now we're working on the vision plan, and then that vision is going to inform changes to zoning later on, about a year from now or so. Councilor?
Yeah, what steps do we have to go through to change the zone?
So I will talk about that in a second, but yeah, essentially we're going to come up with a vision plan in terms of deciding what do people want to happen in the waterfront area, and then based upon that, we're going to take a look at the existing zoning and say, does the current zoning prohibit that? And then we're going to look at things like, well, what would the most appropriate zone be? Do we have a zone, or do we need to create one? And so then we would create zones that allow those uses, and then under what circumstances, how high and whatnot. And then as part of that, we're going to come up with a couple different scenarios of what this might look like. We have a design firm that's going to sort of create some renderings about what this might look like. And then we're also going to do a transportation analysis to make sure that we understand what sort of transportation investments have to happen in order to make sure that we can get more people down there. So, and then through that, obviously, we'll be working through a working group the planning commission, public outreach. There'll be a lot of participation points on this as well. And ultimately, it'll come to city council for adoption, but it will filter through the planning commission and other groups like the EDC. So does that kind of answer your
Yes.
question? Yes. Okay, great. Yeah. So right now we're working on the community vision plan. So the vision plan, the draft, which I have a copy right here, and I'll actually pass it around and someone can take it home if they want, because I've got to print a million if I want. So the vision plan was drafted up by a consultant we hired last year through an RFP process. What they did was that we gave them 5 years of public outreach we did from 2016 to 2021. I wasn't involved in that, but our planning manager was. And so we took all that documented outreach and gave it to the consultant, and they came up with this community vision plan. And what this vision plan does is that it sort of breaks up the planning area into 3 sub-districts and kind of takes a look at the constraints and then what sort of things people wanted to see in each of these areas. So we've got 3 basic sub-districts. You've got Historic City Hall, which is the area around, it's around the bridgehead, sort of it's the old southern.
It's the police station.
It's the old police station, the gas station down there. It's the sort of southern end of the Bolton neighborhood, and it's an older historic commercial center for the city, which has become somewhat isolated. So the second is the Cultural Heritage District, which is essentially the PG facilities, the island of the falls. We call it the Cultural Heritage District because we want to honor the deep history of the falls for both Native American history and European settlement afterwards as well. And then we have the Pond Redevelopment District, which are the lowland areas down. It's floodplain. It's the city's biggest wetland is down there. It's also a large closed aeration pond, which is 15, 20 acres in size.
And will that remain, or is that going to be, is that developable?
So it's under private ownership right now, and so Bob Schultz with an SDG development owns that. He's working with DEQ on how to clean up the area inside the berm, but the wetlands next to the berm have a lot of state and local and federal protections. So we do have it. So he currently has an application in right now to consolidate a lot of small, tiny lots into 3 big ones. And just today, we received a second pre-application request to talk about a residential development along 5th Avenue. So at 5th Avenue, the terrain drops off very steeply into the wetlands. And so there's a thin area of land between the wetlands and the road. And he's come in for an application for development of about 50 homes. It'd be 26 duplexes pushed up against the road.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Is that Bob the same owner?
Yes,
Like,
the
so he's
owner.
looking to expand his real estate past 5th Avenue, instead of like into 5th Avenue? Is that what you're saying?
It's actually on the south side of 5th Avenue, between
Like on 4th Street?
right here. Yeah, so I could show. Yeah, on 5th right there.
Okay.
So he already owns that, and his
Oh, he
idea.
owns that.
Yeah, his idea.
Okay,
Yeah, and we haven't gotten very far into this. This just arrived today.
sure.
So it's not an official application. It's a conversation.
I was just trying to clarify pronouns. I
Oh.
know someone else
Yeah.
it was potentially the person who's going to develop with them. So thank
Okay.
you.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's actually making inquiries about a microenergy district down there in terms of he's thinking about multi-generational households in the microenergy district. And so he's thinking about doing something different. So we're going to have a conversation with him in the near future about that. But as part of that, he's also participating in the process, and his ideas will be filtered through this process as well. But right now his property is owned industrial on the south side by the pond and residential on the north side. So getting back to the overall plan, the plan really filters changes in the area through 4 values, which were adopted as part of past improvement. One is focusing on reinvestment in the area. Another is transportation improvements. Third is river access. What we keep hearing over and over again, people want to get to the river. It's a beautiful spot and they can't. And so that's both through trail access or through additional housing or activity centers civic spaces near the river. And then also historic character as well, just to honor the past as we move forward. So here are a couple of stars. I think in terms of going forward, in terms of implementation, where we're likely to see the biggest changes are where the stars are. One is around the Bridgehead area around Historic City Hall, where there's a lot of land there. That's the area that's probably going to see the redevelopment happen first. The island area where PG is subject to federal licensing and PGE, I think the plan is not intended to dislocate the mill. It's fully intended to accommodate mill operations and the PG plant. It's just we're setting this up in case that closes for whatever reason in the future, so we're ready to go. And then the star in the bottom is the Blue Heron Lagoon Pond, which is the owner is currently looking to clean up, and that's going to be a longer process. But there's about 8 feet of sludge in the bottom of that pond that needs to get remediated. So in terms of community engagement, I mentioned before there was the 5 years of pre-COVID engagement. And right now we're actually working through a number of different mechanisms. We have a stakeholder working group of various people that we're working with. They helped inform the draft of the plan right now. We're doing direct consultation both with the tribes and some of the property owners. And then we have a public involvement plan that identified ways that we're reaching out. Surveys, city events like the open house we had on Saturday. I'm meeting with civic groups such as I met with the Willamette Neighborhood Association last night. I'm meeting with Bolton in April, and we're going out to Cinco de Mayo event. So we're really getting out there. There's a project website and westlandwaterfrontproject.com, and then I've got a QR code here if you want to, and a handy flyer here as well. So in terms of that, where we are now, we currently have a draft market trend analysis to make sure that the plan is actually feasible. So we're working on getting the final draft to release to the public. Linn and Associates is preparing that, and they're a reputable firm in the area that really has a good sense of where we're at on these things. And so they identified a lot of things that would succeed. For example, they said like a general hotel might struggle, but a destination hotel really focused around the falls could actually succeed. They also talked about how the area is zoned industrial, things like makerspace might be a good replacement, or what they're calling public-facing industrial. So like a brew pub, a coffee roastery, things where both manufacturing but also experiential events can happen, where you can enjoy the product as well as make it. So they're working on that. We have the vision plan, and then we have a project webpage where we're really trying to drive people right now. There's a survey, and then there's also a draft of the plan where you can drop pins on it and directly comment in it as well. And then you can actually comment on other people's comments. We're kind of hoping to get a dialogue going on that. And then there's also an events calendar, which is being updated on a rolling basis about where you can find this. So, and in terms of coordination, there are some other projects going on which we're just having to track. So there's Historic City Hall Adaptive Reuse, which I mentioned before. The Willamette Falls and Landings Heritage Coalition is going to be moving in there once it's all done. There's the Blue Heron Aeration and Settling Basin remediation. That's the property down the Volk Street I was talking about earlier. It's when the Blue Heron plants across the river went bankrupt, the county took the property, and then now Mr. Schultz owns it. So he is looking to redevelop this property. Think the pond. He's got ideas for housing, potentially a destination hotel, but this is all sort of concepts right now. The big one, which we're tracking and we're talking about, is the Willamette Falls Intertribal Public Access Project, and this is huge. The Willamette Falls Trust is a coalition of 4 tribal nations. It's I don't want to list them all because I'm sure I'll forget one, but they're the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Huron are not part of the trust, but it's like Umatilla and Yakima and other tribes. And so they are negotiating with the PGE on getting public access to the island. They very much want to construct access to the island and construct public spaces on the island, and for cultural events for their members, but also for the general public. And so they have access to various funding sources, and that the city does not. And so right now they're currently in a 1-year viability due diligence period. And so city staff have been coordinating with consultants hired by the trust. We're looking at challenges like, how do you construct an access path across the river through a floodway and then attach it to these upland areas, So the idea is to put these spaces in between the mill buildings, and to let people really get close to the falls. And so I think part of our project is to respect that process and make sure that doesn't conflict and maybe synergize a little bit. So perhaps a city trail can tie into their trail. And so it's that kind of thing that we're doing. But, this is a longer term process, but this was something not on our radar. And then last year the tribes approached us and said, what do you think about this? And it's amazing. So, so I think, so where are we going in the future? So, I'm about to go on vacation for a couple of weeks, but when I get back, we're going to finalize a technical working group. The idea being to make sure that we're talking to all the different agencies that have authority here to make sure we're not missing anything. Department of State Lands, because of all the wetlands in the area and the river. Department of Land Conservation Development, because there's so much housing legislation coming out of Salem right now to address the housing emergency. We want to make sure that we're in line with all their requirements. ODOT, obviously, because Highway 43 comes through they own the bridge as well. DEQ, because of there's the Blue Heron Pond contamination. And then internal city departments to make sure we're all working together.
I have a question.
Of course.
So who is responsible for the river itself?
It kind of depends. Yeah. It's a combination of Department of State Lands and Corps of Engineers.
Okay.
U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
Yep.
If going from memory. So yeah. So it kind of depends what you're trying to do, I think. So, but yeah. So and the Army Corps of Engineers currently operates the locks.
Right.
Well, they're not operating, but they own them.
They manage.
But yeah, they manage them, and then they're about to divest those to an operating entity that will take that over. And so we're also coordinating with that project a little bit as well. So where are we going? We're also doing continuing public consultation. We're going to be doing the zoning analysis that we mentioned earlier about removing barriers to achieve the vision, and making sure that any new development, make sure to provide things like public access as part of that. I know some of the property owners have done some deep analysis of their properties, and there's some barriers to them reactivating those spaces. We're working with them on that. There's going to be a financing plan to identify how we can pay for all of this. For example, there's tax increment financing down there right now. That will be part of the plan. That could include things like, trail improvement or system development charges, things like that to cover trails, to cover the realignment of Lambeth Falls Drive in order to make the whole interface down by the bridge work better. So ODOT has built their roundabout. The city has a second roundabout planned right in front of Old City Hall to make that flow better. We just don't have any money for that right now. So, but it's in our master plan. It was adopted a few years ago. And then the transportation analysis, and then legislative adoption by city council. We're looking to get the vision plan adopted by the end of the year. And then these other documents, the zoning, the financing plan, sort of trailing in the spring and summer of 2025. And then that's it. It's just, I think at this point, I'm just sort of curious. I know the group has different levels of knowledge about the project. I'm just sort of curious what you've heard and what sort of questions you have about this going forward. And maybe, you know, I'm happy to come back and return to the EDC as well, if you guys updated as we move forward. But I'm just curious about any initial thoughts or concerns or ideas you might have. Yeah.
Well, to answer your first question, I think
Yeah.
it would be really helpful to probably get a feel for, I mean, I think most of us probably are somewhat knowledgeable
Yeah.
of the project at this point.
Mhm.
I feel like I'm pretty knowledgeable about what's going on.
Mhm.
I'll maybe just go around and say if we're familiar with this or not.
Broadly,
Yeah.
but I mean, have you go through it all in
Yeah.
areas specifically, but I've been to presentations for part of these different processes.
Mhm. Okay.
And you guys are,
Yeah, no, it's great to hear the detail, because you hear so many different things.
Mhm.
And what's actually part of the plan and not here
Yeah,
today.
yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
No, I thought it was helpful.
I guess a couple questions I know there are quite a few issues with the tribes trying to come to agreement.
Yes.
Has that been resolved, or is that still in process?
So there are various agreements, disagreements, differential goals. You know, the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde now owns, you know, land over in Oregon City, which they're redeveloping as Tumwater Village. And so they control that area. So they have chosen to move forward on their own with that. And so the other 4 tribes are seeking their own access point and ways to shape the experience of the falls. And so we are striving to work with all the tribes, and I think we're engaging with them in different ways. And so we've had direct one-on-ones with them. They also, we have representation of them all on the working group as well. So some, you know, we're engaging with them where we can. And so, but there are going to be disagreements between any entity, not just tribal, but, you know, different cities, different groups. Yeah.
And are there any barriers related to that, or things moving forward as they're kind of working out there?
Yeah, so I think in terms of that, a lot of it is that I think, for example, one of the things that, as I understand it, I'm not directly involved, is that ODOT did a study about doing a bike pedestrian bridge from Oregon City to West Linn. And there are different alignments about where that falls. And I know the owners of the parking lot behind Historic City Hall would very much like to have that land in their parking lot to sort of help activate that space and get better flow back and forth across the river. But where that lands is subject to tribal disagreement, you know, in terms of they have where that falls. So, and that process is going to play out, you know, in its own way. So I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but
I think so. I just know there's been a lot of delays just to start your process.
Yes, yeah.
So I'm glad to hear that things are, I mean,
Yeah.
anything in government's going to inch
Absolutely.
along, but
The
this
things
is great.
tend to inch and inch, and then suddenly they take off.
Yeah.
So I think there's always usually a lot of lead time, and then at some point there's a tipping point, and it could be it's the new zoning, it could be transportation improvement, it could be a major investor comes in and finally has the capital to get it going. And yeah, so it's like one of the things we're going to do is take city council on a tour of the Vancouver waterfront. We're setting that for later this summer. I used to work I used to work as a consultant up in the city of Vancouver and right down the street from that site. And it was quiet, and then wow. But that represents a lot of many years of lead work and being ready to go. And in that case, the waterfront was isolated from downtown because emergency vehicles couldn't get to the site because of the train tracks. And so they came up with a plan to get access under the train tracks, but they didn't have the money for it. And then during the Great Recession, the Obama administration, I can't remember the name of the money fund, but they started giving money to shovel-ready projects. And they had this idea. They said we can lift the tracks and get cars under it. They tapped in that federal money, and the moment they had access to the old mill site, suddenly development became super viable. And so we also remember the working group, Jim Edwards was involved in that process as well. And so there was a lot of lead time, and now I don't know if it has been up there, but it's so vibrant that they have a great waterfront trail. That's not West Linn. We have a little more naturalistic area. It's different topography, but there's a lot of lessons learned that we're trying to learn from them about that. So
They have much more wider space.
they do, yeah. Ours is
Yeah,
ours is a little bit
This
scrunched.
feels more like the Chicago River walk.
Yes,
You've never
absolutely.
been
Yes,
on
I
it.
have been
Yeah,
on that. Yeah,
yeah.
But I think with West Linn, that area can be sort of brought to life.
absolutely.
You know, it needn't be a huge, great project, but it can be brought to life.
Fantastic.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I definitely have a few questions. I also just want to honor the people who might be raising their hands
Yes.
or not.
That's
I
true.
just want to make sure that
Go back.
if Russell's here. Okay.
Oh, hand.
Yeah, it's hand.
Yeah, there we go. Sorry,
Okay.
Russell.
Cool.
Let me get this. I'll stop sharing this.
I'll let Russell go first, but I have a few questions I got here that I'd like to revisit.
Russell, do you have any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's kind of what I think Shannon was saying. My screen got really small when you were talking, so I think it was Shannon. And so when I first joined the EDC years ago, the city was on this big waterfront project push. We had consultants hired, we had designs planned, everything set up, and then it seemed like there was a landowner conflict, and it felt like it died. And so I guess my question is that you said we have new consultants, or is it the same ones, or like, is it where I don't know, it just kind of feels like maybe we're in consultant perpetuity. Like we have a new consultant, they said this is what we're going to do, and now we have a new consultant, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Like from an EDC perspective, I'm super excited about the waterfront and think that we need to, and we're missing out hugely as a city, but we just continually run into the same thing where we don't really own it. The PGE is not interested. There's too many conflicting parties. Nobody. So I'm just curious if you have any insight into why this will be different.
Absolutely. So I think so the waterfront area, this plan represents the accumulation of multiple prior planning efforts for the area. So there was the Arch Bridge plan for the area that was proceeding along, and then there was a change of council, and I believe that project was canceled because there were different expectations were desired, and then it reformed again. And then COVID happened, and the project kind of paused for a couple of years. There was COVID was quite a disruption. It was a disruption, and so this is sort of it's a continuation of this process. So John Morgan, I believe, was running this from 2016 through 2021, and then the project paused for a couple of years, and then we went through an RFP to get a new project going, and or not a new project, but to continue that past work. And so we changed consultants based upon who applied for the new round of funding. So if you look at the plan, we really sort of document a lot of the planning work, or prior planning work, and we're trying to learn from it and build on it. So our goal here is by the end of, by the middle of 2025, is to have an adopted vision plan, changes in zoning, and then a few documents to support that, such as a market study and transportation system analysis to kind of both justify this, but also inform future changes.
I think to Russell's question,
Yeah.
there was resistance in the past. Has
Yes,
that resistance
yes,
changed?
There was some resistance as well. I think some of that was based on perception, as about the project, which is why the city spent 5 years doing public outreach after that. So I think it was, and that's also partly why we're going back out. So this plan is based on 5 years of work, but we're going back out again just to double check and say, this is what we heard. We're just re-verifying that. And so we're hoping that through this continual outreach, we can maybe identify points of concern and address those. So hopefully that's what happens this time. But
PG is suddenly coming along with this, or there's still some prodding needed there?
so I don't think there's some prodding. PG has their own goals and needs, and we are having direct consultations with them. They also hold their cards very close to their chest in terms of that. They own almost the entire waterfront from I-205 all the way down to the confluence of the Tualatin, and then up the Tualatin for quite a ways. So they're like Willamette Park is partially their property, Wolf Street. A lot of the land down there is owned by PG and used by the city. So we have a good relationship, but they also keep their cards close about what they do. But they are interested in making use of the land and providing access where they can. So, but it's some of this is going to be a little unpredictable as well. So
my first question is specifically, what are you looking from the EDC regarding feedback and questions right now?
So
because I mean, we are the economic development committee, so I'm assuming like us to focus on the economy.
Correct.
Yeah. And is there anything in particular that you're not looking for feedback in your vision plan?
I'm looking for feedback on anything on the visions, on all of it. So I think my goal here was to sort of give you the overview, make you aware of the website. I would really encourage you to take a look, respond to the survey if you have time. Totally fine. It takes about 15-20 minutes. There is a prioritization thing. For example, Passwork people said, we want to see civic space down here. What does that look like? Is it a park? Is it a plaza? You know, or people want housing. Is that single family? Is it high density residential? Is it mid? So it's a prioritization exercise. And so I think my goal today was just to get you up to speed. And then I'm happy to come back where we can kind of talk more about your thoughts and concerns.
This is just an idea and like your opinion. But if would it be helpful to possibly put out to the committee a request for questions or feedback, and then I could compile them for you? Like,
absolutely,
that might give you time to think about things.
I think I've got a few here.
Okay, but I was just thinking too, like that could be, I could put together a document, but then we have sort of a record of feedback too, which I think could be helpful to say, oh, the EDC has questions or suggestions, and then we could incorporate that into a future meeting. Not to say to not ask them now, I was just thinking we could also, I could help collate something. If you don't have questions now, you're welcome to send me them at any time, and maybe I'll just keep an ongoing document to give to you.
Correct, that'd be great. Yeah, I imagine this as an ongoing conversation, and so these are not one-time opportunities. And so a lot of it just,
Okay. So if we could go to the slide, then I have a few specific questions about first the tracking coordination slide. And I haven't seen this image yet. I've seen the other image in your vision thing here. Specifically about, I think that
this slide is not something we produced. This is from the Willamette Falls Intertribal Public Access Project.
Okay.
So that's something they've produced with Bass, which is it's their design firm.
Okay. So, yeah, it's a really stupid question, but
of course.
What's the white bar?
I'm sorry?
What's the white bar?
Oh, the white bar?
Is that a thing, or is that
what that represents is probably existing infrastructure. So the idea is that the project would not remove the mill from the island. They're sort of working around the mill operations.
Okay.
So that just represents, it's like an industrial space.
Okay, so that's like just the artist segmenting it off then.
Correct, yeah, it just sort of says, this is a path, but there is a pipe as well. It's an industrial space, but also a river space, public space.
That answers a few of my other questions too then.
Hopefully not containing high pressure steam.
Hopefully not.
Right.
Yeah.
Hopefully not, yeah. No, it'd be something, I guess the vibe would be something more like, I'm blanking on the name of that park up in Seattle, with the old factories, right by the river, the stuff,
Oh, yes.
It's
like the industrial park, but that's
but it's sort of a natural space that has old stuff there too.
Isn't it like Factoria or something like that?
Yeah, I can't recall, but it's sort of, it's that kind of thing, and
Okay.
there's a lot of examples of that.
And then for the tracking and coordination slide,
Mhm.
or sorry, that's this one. So
Yeah.
for the where are we going section? That's it.
Yes.
So maybe the previous one.
Yeah.
That one.
Yes.
So this is the technical working group.
Correct.
I was thinking that there's a few more that aren't included in
Okay.
here.
What were you thinking?
I was pretty sure we did this with CCI,
Mhm.
and we had a whole bunch of people, and I thought the youth
Yes.
committee was on there. I thought TAG was involved, and I thought
We actually have two different groups. We have the stakeholder working group.
yeah. Oh, that's
Which
the
is
one
more,
I'm thinking of.
that's the one you're thinking.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So,
That's
yeah,
the
so
one I'm on.
exactly.
Yeah,
Is
okay.
literally this more
Yeah.
of an internal?
This is more of like a staff level, like technical sort of thing where.
That's what it looked like.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. I was like, because all those names are also on, I think the other one too.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
yeah, so the stakeholder is more of a general sort of public representation. And this is just more of making sure. So when you change things like zoning,
Yep.
there's a lot of requirements in state statutes and rules. And that a lot of this is running through them saying, do these, just to make sure that they can flag for us, like, hey, don't forget about the statute, don't forget about this process. And so they can help us anticipate conflicts that we maybe, unpurposely creating for ourselves, just to make sure things go a little bit smoother upon implementation. And to make sure that they understand where we're going, and they, and so we can work together.
So would you say changing zoning is the priority item?
That,
Like in terms of checklist, number one?
essentially, yes. And so, yeah, because right now it's zoned industrial, and you can do a narrow band of things. Yeah.
And what's some timelines associated with changing the zoning?
So right now our schedule has this happening by the end of next fiscal year, basically June of 2025. That's our goal. If it takes longer, it takes longer. If we hear a lot of resistance from the public, we'll slow down. But the idea is that our current schedule is to have it done by that point. And that would include both changes to the types of uses allowed, but also under what circumstances. They made, like, making people provide access to the waterfront, for example, not blocking it off or not going higher than a certain amount. So
forgive me if I'm asking questions, but who makes the zone? Who has to agree to the zone change? I presume the city council.
ultimately city council, yeah, absolutely.
Is that
That's it, correct, yeah. So anytime you change a land use regulation, it goes through the planning commission, that recommends to council, who has final authority,
And it does come through at some point here for feedback.
Correct, yeah. We typically go out and get feedback, and we notice everyone in the city, typically if in the state has a lot of requirements where if you're removing allowed rights, if you're making zoning more restrictive, you have to individually notice the people affected. In this case, we'll be most likely expanding the range of things they can do. But again, we'll be sending notices to all the affected property owners. We're currently trying to set up a meeting with all the property owners in the planning area. We've met with the major ones, but we're going to try and meet with the small ones now as well. And so yeah.
I think that will be one of the topics that when John comes back to say, okay, code, like to get your input, we could prepare a little bit more in advance and send information or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of off the wall thing.
Yeah.
I was in Amsterdam a couple of years ago. They have lots of people living in canal boats.
Oh, yes.
On the canals.
Uh-huh.
And I also saw stream ski. It's a house, it's floating on the water, but it's on pier, so it can't go downstream. It can only go up and down depending
Oh,
on the
nice.
water.
Yeah.
But it's connected to utilities on shore also. What are the legalities of that on the Willamette?
Yeah, so there are clusters of those up and down the Willamette. And so there's some just around the Selwood Bridge, just sort of north of that. There's a bunch around Sauvie Island. I don't know offhand, but my understanding is that the state has kind of grandfathered in the ones you have now. It's a lot harder to do new facilities now, but a lot of grandfathered in ones. I'm not an expert, so,
Okay.
but they do exist in Oregon. And there is a dock in the planning area, under the Arch Bridge off of Territorial Drive. Just right under, it's pretty well hidden down there. There's an old private sort of fishing dock that people tie their boats up. It gets a lot of use during fishing season, but people used to live down there, and I think the state made them stop that practice. But I think there were people living on the dock, or at least staying there long term. But I think that's changed. If that's something, it's something we can look into. It's a fun concept. I mean, I know the houseboats you're talking about. But I think the state has, because of things like sewage issues and things like that, and habitat issues, may have dialed that back a little bit. So yeah, but it's a fun concept.
I know that
So,
there are mortgage programs through credit unions, just because I know somebody who actually delivers those mortgages, so they're still
wow.
being sold and bought.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if they're just, I don't know about new construction.
yeah.
They're getting nearly impossible to insure.
Yeah.
Oh, I can
Interesting.
imagine.
Impossible.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, really?
So,
So to the idea of
Yeah.
something foreign,
Yeah.
one of the things that I have imagined since this has been back on the table is something that's very much more walkable.
Mhm.
And
Yes,
it's
yes.
like, so we're not gonna have a whole parking lot Safeway size.
Absolutely, yes.
And then we're
yes.
just gonna have a little small
Yes.
pond out here left over.
Yes.
I know the original plan had a parking structure. There's a parking structure here.
Mhm.
There is also field parking.
Correct. Yeah,
So
those are potential options.
okay.
And actually, one of the survey, we asked people which they prefer. And so on that, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's
Go ahead,
okay.
Ian.
But I'm just like to the vein of like, reducing the field parking
Yes.
and
Yeah.
having something that's more Sicilian or
Mhm, mhm.
Cabernet,
Mhm.
Italian,
Yeah.
where it's, on the cliff
Mhm.
and it's, you have walkable paths and you can just,
Yeah.
park along the side somewhere.
Mhm.
And then we can have more development on the
Mhm.
economy side of that substantially because, I mean, I guess parking spots actually make a lot of money.
Yeah.
I should probably not say that they don't make any money,
Yeah.
but they do charge an
Yeah.
hourly rate at times. And then another thing is in the document, there's some market analysis.
Yes.
And I think it's kind of tricky to advertise some of the services
Mhm.
that have a public fee, right? They're not meant to make money. So like a recreational
Oh, of course, yeah.
section, like
Mhm.
that's not intended to generate profit.
Mhm.
The same way as where should I point over here?
Safeway, for example.
Not Safeway, but the Oppenheimer pool,
Oh, yeah.
right? Like people are like it's not gonna make money. It's like, well, it's a service. It's a public service.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to make money.
Mhm.
So if there's a public service feature to the document
Mhm.
about how this is going to pay
Mhm.
or this is going to bring profits to the community as a whole
Mhm.
and other
Mhm.
assets.
Yeah. So I think the intent was not to exclude things that don't just make money, because obviously a lot of things bring other value
Mhm.
beyond just pure profit.
Yeah.
I think the idea was also to maybe right-size the zoning, to be realistic about what's allowed, and also make sure that we include things that hadn't been thought about. And so I think, just as someone who's been practicing planning for about 20 years, people are very creative in terms of when they're generating businesses.
Mhm.
And a lot of zoning code trails behind, and there's so many times where we're like, wow, we didn't expect this. So Airbnb was the latest disruptor to that. 30, 40 years ago, video rental stores was like, no one in the zoning code thought you would drive somewhere. So I think we're trying to do the market study to make sure that we open the doors wide enough,
Mhm.
but not too wide. And so,
Well, and that's why I was saying like a recreational,
yeah,
and I bring it up.
I think you had said there
Because
was
recreational
plan
is
for
something
civic
different.
areas, and I think
There
that's
are,
what you're talking
yeah.
about.
That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
definitely a section of
Yeah.
it, which also gets me into these STAR documents, and I'm kind of at I feel like this document is
Mhm.
promising me one thing,
Mhm.
which might be a part of the 4-year plan,
Mhm.
but it's not gonna be part of that 20-year plan.
Yeah, and yeah.
And, which is fine,
Mhm.
but I think having that distinction
Mhm.
is like where my brain's going at, because like there's two starred areas, right? Completely opposite of each
Yeah.
other, where by the time this is gonna be done,
Mhm.
it's, people aren't probably gonna recognize that they're connected necessarily.
Yeah.
Like this is a whole section, because
Yeah.
there's still something right in the middle that's completely different.
Yeah, and yeah, because there is an expectation that these are going to move at different rates.
Yeah.
And the city doesn't control the land, so it's going to happen based on other people's timelines. And in terms of promise, I think I picked up on the word promise here, and I think the idea, this is more of a desired vision and not a promise vision.
Yeah.
And that's why we're trying to get feedback about what people want to see in that. What
Like
do
I
they
think
desire?
you said earlier,
Yeah.
what I imagine is once there's these little steps and your feedback and everybody's feedback is so important. And then something takes off that'll be completely unpredictable. Well, we'll get,
Yeah.
financing from somebody and then somebody will have something developed. So
Yeah.
it's sort of interesting I think it will continue to evolve
Yeah.
and change quite a bit, actually.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I don't think we can hang our hat completely on
Yeah, I'm just thinking though that this definitely feels more like that 40-year vision,
Mhm.
whereas I think a 20-year vision would be really nice to have something that's focused on those two areas. If those are the actual two areas that we can focus on.
Yeah, so actually to your point, the zoning, I should clarify, the zoning analysis and changes has always been a focus on the historic city hall subdistrict, the pond redevelopment area and sub-district. The cultural heritage district, because PG essentially owns and controls that.
Yes.
Is that the zoning analysis for that will trail in the future. I think we want to get the vision plan down and get an idea of zoning, but really our work is to focus on the northern and southern ends. But the areas are they are sort of contiguous, and we're looking at things like trail alignments and to make sure these areas do play well together. But I think the idea is that the northern and southern ends are more than 20-year. And the middle is probably the 40-year, but maybe not.
Is there, I would be interested in a really good solution where the 40-year plan is not dependent on us getting halfway done with the 20-year plan.
Okay, yeah.
And then we stop and, it's like, okay, well now, this is the bridge that goes nowhere. We got one of those here now.
Oh, totally, absolutely, yeah.
That makes sense. But this is, if we're only focused on the 4-year vision for this document itself, then I can pivot my comments to 40-year specific and forget about any 20-year conundrums that could happen.
Yeah, so I think a lot of this, I get like 20 versus 40 years sort of arbitrary numbers, but this sort of medium and long term it is. And I think we have to make sure that because different entities own this, that we don't predicate one area on another area necessarily. And to a certain degree, that may have to happen, but
that we also want it to be able to be connected at some point. So how do we do that to honor both of the plans and visions?
Yeah, and then part of that is that transportation system plan, which access is the big one. And as part of that, we have the Linn Falls Drive master plan, which involves widening Linn Falls Drive all the way to the bridge, having a 12-foot wide mixed use path for bikes and pedestrians paralleling that road. And that's a central spine for the area. And because right now it's very dangerous to walk from Willamette to the bridge. And
Well, it'd be nice to be able to use the parking that's right there and just walk over.
Absolutely.
It's sitting right there, but we can't use.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any other questions? Russell, do you have any other questions?
I do not have any other questions. I'm excited for the project. I just hope it actually goes somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, there are a couple of property owners who are waiting for the zoning and everything to change. And so we want to enable their vision, but also just honor that their private property rights, but also make sure that the city make sure that we get what this community wants about public access and civic spaces where people can come down and access the river.
And that was I mean, even for the 40-year idea, if we could have the sections spaced off 5 square foot or acreage.
Oh, yeah,
like,
absolutely.
in total, that would be really helpful.
Absolutely. That's actually something I was,
Okay.
it was on my list of things for our consultant, so yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
That
Yeah.
would be really, really great, because then I think that also provides us an actual idea of what we're talking about instead of 275, but it's,
Yeah.
200 of that is to the mill. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes
Like
sense.
sub plans is the way your brain's thinking.
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah. That's I like it both.
Well, John, thank you so much. That
Thank-
was.
Thank you for your
Really
time.
helpful.
I really appreciate it, and I really encourage you to go to the website if you can, or pass these out to your friends, because we really want that feedback.
And the
And
survey,
so-
you guys could fill out the survey too.
So in terms, yeah,
I was just gonna say, what if we got in the mail, not the mail, sorry, email.
yes.
I couldn't read it very well. It almost was like it was a fuzzy picture.
Oh, what-
On the website link or the
No,
attachment?
the attachment.
That's
So
that's
is
the
that on
draft.
here?
I noticed it too. I was rubbing my screen a second ago. I was like, man, my screen's dirty. And I don't know. If there's like this draft.
No, it wasn't
just-
that. It was just the ability to read it.
Oh,
And I
okay.
even, yeah, it was just really.
If you could forward us that email or maybe call it out, I can.
Elena sent
my
out.
email.
Mine
Is your
was
email?
fine.
Oh, really? Maybe it was just me.
So, I different type of computer or browser,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay,
I'm using Chrome right now, and this is what you're talking about, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if you can zoom in.
It was fuzzy even as I zoomed in. I had a hard time reading it. I got the gist of things, but yeah.
I'll take a look at it. I may just have been like.
Do you need Chrome to look at it? No,
That's what I was
You can
using.
do whatever.
Oh, you were
want.
using Chrome? Yeah.
I don't know.
Use a printer.
It
could be my
computer.
That's what I like to do.
I'm tired.
Yeah.
It
There
could
you
just
go.
be
I don't
my
know.
We could probably
eyes.
take
I
this
don't
one,
know.
maybe.
I don't
That's
know.
enough.
All right.
Were you drinking?
Or John.
Thank you so much.
Were you drinking?
Thank you.
Not at that.
No, anybody wants to keep it or recycle it?
I said it's all yours
Yeah.
now.
Thank you so much.
We'll send, people can send me any comments.
Well, put it in my mouth.
Oh. Perfect. I could keep a small artifact of how this whole. I obviously have a massive amount of volume for this, because in 40 years I want to sit and have a retirement
Yeah.
dinner with my wife.
It wasn't on my phone. It was on my
Exactly.
And
computer.
that's
Okay.
where why I'm a lot more
I'm assuming
charged about this. I
Shatreen is
think,
coming.
people-
So Shatreen was not able to come, so we're gonna postpone Chamber of Commerce update. We did not approve the meeting notes, so we can just do that quickly.
Yeah.
As well.
I'm okay with it.
Okay. Anyone second?
Yes.
We have a second.
I'll second it.
Okay. Anyone questions, comments, concerns about the notes? Did you get a chance to see them?
Please approve of it.
And from the email?
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought you.
Oh, for sure.
Okay. All right. All those in favor? Aye. Any nays? Russ, are you a yay or nay?
Yay.
Yay.
Okay, All right.
Enthusiastic.
and they have been approved. Did you also go through the public comment?
No one was here to
Okay.
make a comment, so I did address that, yes.
Okay, do we want to move on to the goals with the time that's left, or do you want to do the small grant discussion?
Let me just, say one or two things. I think we can pass on the small business grant discussion, and I'll bring it back up to you guys if it is something that we want to move forward with. I'm meeting with partners, Historical Linn and the Chamber of Commerce next week. I was sort of hoping to maybe find a way to use some of the American Rescue Plan dollars if we have them left over from different pieces of maybe the other grants or, but that would also take, we would need to present to council and that would need to be approved. And some of the funding is also still allocated for wayfaring and branding, and that may be a project that I take on and manage, and then I would look for your assistance there too. So if we could just also postpone that, I think it would be more helpful to, well, we also need to appoint a new chair and vice chair. Just want to make sure to get that done. And then, yeah, take a look at sort of where we're headed this year. And I wanted to just make sure at some point in the discussion we talk about our meeting. We had talked about how we want to do meetings and if there are any other ideas around that. And then also welcome our new member, Peter. This is Peter Ryder.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome, Peter. They'll get to know the different members, We don't really have bios on our website, but if you have any questions, you're always welcome to contact me. Peter and I did meet for coffee, and so I was able to give him a background on what we've been working on, and I think you've even had a copy of the report. But if you want to say a little sentence or two about your interest in the committee, you're welcome to.
Thank you. I think what we've heard today is fantastic, and for your retirement plan, it's great. Sitting there with your grandchildren on the waterfront.
So,
But we haven't really heard much about economic development in the short term. I mean, by short term, next 4 to 5 years, 3 to 5 years, and so it seems to me that the city could do something like create an incubation space, whether in this general area or physically, it doesn't really matter. To encourage and bring forth entrepreneurial spirits that may be within the community. I'm sure that there are plenty, and just a space or an encouragement for entrepreneurial ideas to flourish and grow and therefore generate economic development. Those are the things I've been thinking about.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful, and I think you'll find that idea actually aligns with.
I'm sure it's.
Yeah,
it's
actually, I think in our work plan, it's sort of been talking about either a physical space or some sort of pop-up type
exactly.
event. And Josh Carter actually has built a very wonderful one up in Portland, so he has some experience with that. And I can share the link to his organization or company. But I think that is it's great that you sort of mention it without even having been in the group or chatting with it, because it has kind of come up even. There hasn't been anybody in my position for a long time. I've been here 2 years, but prior to that, there was a big gap. But I found years past, there's sort of been a desire for that. I think Westland would be a good fit for that. So that actually leads into, I'll give you guys some paper copies too if you need to refresh yourself. But I do think that could be one, if we wanted to pick 1 or 2 things to work on, that might be, because we also struggle in the group with kind of getting off course, and we don't have a lot of clear direction. No offense from council, because the council's priorities are great priorities, but the economic development piece of it are related to the long-range planning projects right now. So I think it would behoove us to stay plugged into those for sure and sort of be working group for them, maybe as needed, and then pick 1 or 2 other projects that we can just plug away at. So here's the goals that sort of address some of this. Heather. Thank you. And then I also wanted, just throwing a lot of things at you right now, but just reread the purpose of the committee. Right now it states that the EDC functions to advocate for the business community, make recommendations on economic development issues, and assist the city in promoting a pro-business environment in West Linn. I am open to, I know other community advisory groups have done this, rewrite the mission if we feel like, we want to create something more specific. I know that, Josh, I did read your feedback to the committee at the last meeting, that there's just been a desire to have more clarity. And if we need to ask council, I think that I'm welcome to be a liaison. I would like to start to move away from me not leading the group as much. I'm typically, I know I can be chatty, but I think the staff liaison was actually just really supposed to sort of present materials as needed. And I think the idea for me to bring people like John Floyd and Chris Myers, the associate planner for Vision 43, or bring maybe other people who have built maker spaces or co-working spaces or innovation. And I might lean on you guys for that too, but that, I'm happy to help set it up, but I think we need to elect a new chair. I would like to, and Shannon's been great, but just lean on having it be led a little bit more. Having you guys drive it. So I think my biggest question is, based on what we've chatted about and what you're thinking, what would you like to work on? And do we want to continue to meet monthly or as needed? And then voting on that. And Sharon, so feel free to chime in and.
Yeah, because we haven't met for 5 months now. Was it 4 months? Was it
We met in
December?
December.
Was it
I think
December?
you were out of town.
Oh, I thought we were approving October notes.
Did I print October?
No.
December
Somebody says, sorry, meeting notes from October. Okay, yeah, maybe. I'm gonna top here. Yeah, I see that now, my bad. Okay. So maybe I was here. It just feels like I've been here for a minute.
It's all right.
I was
It's
probably
what
here.
happens.
I was here. I remember I was here because I had.
We were eating the Grinch kisses.
Yes, the
Yes.
Grinch kisses.
Yes.
Well, your
yes.
name is, I think, I don't know. Did I leave you off?
Maybe. Yeah, I'm
It was
on.
We
a
were-
typo, so.
Yeah, you were eating dinner
Right, yeah,
afterwards,
I
and so
had-
you were chowing down on the.
I know, I
yeah.
had to put them away. Anyway,
So you were here.
okay, thank you. Yeah, I would actually, still like to meet monthly, that's my 2 cents.
Okay.
Anyway,
I think meeting concentrates the mind and keeps us focused. So I agree with you, I think, the monthly.
Heather?
I prefer bi-monthly. I think, we would be more focused and use our time wisely.
Okay. Shannon?
Well, I feel like the continuity continues when we meet monthly, and there's always things to be working on, and I love having the presentations. I think really helps us understand better what's going on, so.
Okay. Josh?
I don't mind. It's not as, for me, it's not as how often we meet, but the quality and knowing that we're leaving with what the next action plan is. And what's the next step? Something tangible. Like I want to be able to look back after the year and say, we accomplished this, 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 and this, instead of meeting 12 times or 8 times, whatever it's done. And then the other part is, some of these things, like the 43 project, it's great to hear from him, of course, but I felt like it was a bit redundant for him to come tell us. We could have just gone to city council meeting and presented. So there's a lot of those things where I'm like, I don't want staff to stay up 6, 7 o'clock at night after working a full day just to tell us something that just told city council.
And I think I understand your framework, and I'm just gonna think of my boss or maybe someone else who, because I've sort of presented the same things, and I think what it is that it's, even though it's duplicative, it might be a channel that someone else hasn't heard.
Sure.
And then I think also city council does, on their priorities, ask for these committees to just give feedback or be involved. So it's also builds trust with the community because there's transparency. So, because I've often said, I don't think we need an economic development committee because sometimes it isn't clear what we're supposed to be working on, and we don't have an updated plan. So another thought is, do we recommend for the next biennium to allocate funds to update a plan as we're, implementing these other vision plans? I think that could potentially be. Russell disappeared, so we still have a quorum. I think he just left.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah. But
Need a quorum to adjourn?
would you say?
Do you need a quorum? in
No,
order
but
to
if
adjourn?
we didn't have a quorum, we'd have to stop. And he left, yeah.
No, I mean, I think, having a meeting dedicated to where we all want to get done, probably reset at a foundation level.
You mean for the next one?
Or whenever we can sneak it in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be the next one, so I know we're postponing a couple things, but to have a committee meeting dedicated to what is it that we want to get done
Yeah,
in the next 12 months or in the next 2 years, whatever it may be.
yeah, and I think another idea to sort of accommodate the every other sort of concept, which I do think could potentially be effective if there were one or two projects like this co-working space or some sort of innovation hub. If we decided to have one meeting completely on that, we could also agree that the next meeting might be off-site or at a walking tour at his co-working space or doing homework so that, but what I think I would like from you guys is to think about ways that we can move the projects forward. I mean, I can help assist, and I think it's good for us to define one or two things because otherwise it gets off track because I have other things that I'm working on and the committee is actually not supposed to direct my work. So I think that would be maybe for the next meeting. I don't know. I mean, we can look at them now, but just finding a couple tangible things. I mean, I do think the report, I looked at it, is quite. Does someone have 2 copies? Did I give you 2 by chance? I think I did.
Yeah.
We've done a lot, in my mind, we've done a lot with business support, and I think that is sort of, it doesn't necessarily need to have the committee's advisement, to keep going forward with the program that I've built, doing outreach or newsletters or having events. But I think the Highway 43 business group, that might be something I could really use some help with, but I think that is going to be a win to continue to develop that business group because it does support Chris and that Vision 43 project. We're already sort of collaborating much more. So I'll bring him back again soon. But I think maybe working on an incentive program and really sort of drilling down on that could be a project that we work on, and it could be a real win. Say, hey, we developed this incentive program to be a proactive business climate for West Linn, and then we'd also have something really tangible as these other long-range planning projects develop. So if you're looking at the goal setting, these are things we recommended. Now, council didn't mention anything about small businesses and their priorities, but I don't think it doesn't mean that you don't. No, it's just like I mentioned earlier, the economic development projects that are priorities for council are Vision 43 and the waterfront. So I also think that those should really be priorities. And if we can find ways to, maybe take a little chunk out of that project. I actually think I should meet with the city of Vancouver and maybe a couple of other municipalities that have done this type of work to sort of, and maybe I bring them in and say, hey, what would you recommend to our community and group to be proactive as we build these, what types of data, things like that. I think it reminds me of bringing a presenter or someone to help us along could be beneficial. So, and then the tourism development, I think, is where I get a little overwhelmed because that can kind of, working on a lot of different things in like a little way can like take, not be necessarily the most effective, but the wayfaring and branding project, if I end up doing that, that's actually going to end up taking up quite a bit of my time. And so I may need to meet every other month, or we have, as needed. So unless there's projects that you guys, again, if you're driving the work and you have a project you want to work on that sort of fits into the scope of things, I can always find, staff liaison to sit in or
Because I don't see the innovation hub here on the goal setting, and that is something we have talked about quite a bit. We have it, we talked about it the last December meeting, the co-working space, the innovation hub. So I think that would be good to have that included on here.
Yeah, I agree that, and that's can appeal to individuals within the community who have thoughts and ideas, entrepreneurial vision and so on.
Yeah, and there is a pop-up space that has developed.
Where is that?
It's on Willamette Falls Drive. I think it is close to the roundabout. I think it's a building like right next
Oh,
to
yeah,
it.
okay.
It's one of those buildings right there.
Mhm.
I have, the time I went to see the space, it was closed, so but.
Is it different than Thrive? This is a newer?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
This is fairly new. It was temporary, now I think it's become more permanent. So it might be a great place to start some kind of, it is already kind of a co-working space.
Oh, is it?
A little bit, but I think it could be further developed, but that might be a place to start. But I think that definitely should be part of the goals.
You know, I'm looking at the challenges and we're talking about business support right now and provide entrepreneurs more support. So number 3 on the challenges there is really ironic. We're a business support advisory group as opposed to working on academic development for the city.
That was a comment that was just included. So this has already been, this is like, we're not revising this.
No,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
what was just said just now while sitting here was like, you know, that we feel like we should support entrepreneurs more.
Yeah.
That was just a conversation we just had.
Yeah.
And right here in 2023 challenges, we stated some members feel the group is now a business support advisory group.
Yeah.
As opposed to working on economic development for the city.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what we just did. So that's
I think
going.
that's okay. I think that's, yeah.
It's
It is
fine, but it's a
economic
challenge, but it's
development.
a, it's
I
a
mean, it
challenge,
is,
and I guess
yeah.
having a clear focus is something that, you know, we could do for ourselves as well. And so, you know, while we're looking at the goals, and the goal setting, you know, I think we need to make that clear distinction.
And I think if I could
What
just
we're
go
trying
around
to
the
do
room,
here.
like, if you could pick one thing that you would want to work on, like with the committee this year, what would it be?
I mean, I guess that's the difference of, you know, for like CCI, you know, I'm not actively working on a project.
Yeah.
You know, I go there and we have discussions on, any material needs to be discussed at that time. And it's not that, you know, so I don't know how to interpret that question. I don't think I'm interpreting it right. Like, you think, should I be doing something outside to like?
No, like it's just
as a
if you were,
volunteer service or?
no, more of like a recommendation, you know, a lot of
Okay.
people really have recommendations, so.
So like what would I be working on? Can you ask the question again?
I was just curious if out of all the goals, if there was something that you know,
Out of all
was
these goals, like,
most important to you.
yeah, I feel like,
Highway 43,
I think
Building
Highway
Innovation Hub.
43 is a big one, and I also think the Innovation Hub's a big one. I think
Okay.
those two alone
Yeah.
are huge, and that would speak so much volume to what is missing in Westland.
Yeah.
And it could be related, right?
Yeah.
There could be a Innovation Hub on 43.
Yeah.
You know, there could be, I don't think that's what we discussed, but I'm just.
No, I think the
Throwing it
Highway
out there.
43 Business Coalition group that Chris and I are coordinating an event together. Chris is the planner who's running the Vision 43 project. And I've talked about maybe getting the contact information for the Empton McDonald's or doing something a little bit wild and having an event in there. But I think that they are connected. That's sort of where my brain was, is if we could just pick one or two things, you know, moving the Highway 43 business group forward, supporting the Vision 43 and the waterfront project as things come up, you know, and then this innovation hub. Maybe we just put that on one agenda and really drill down. Maybe we bring someone like Rob Campbell from the Small Business Development Center or somebody else. I mean, you've already spoken, but you could speak again and in your way about, we could meet prior and have some sort of actionable items. Like, okay, well, what can we do here? How can we? And I think what I would like is then just, and not to say give you homework, but to have you guys really help with it, as opposed to like giving me a lot of extra work. I mean, I'm saying that I'm not gonna help or support, but it's if that makes any sense. But so, okay, so I'm hearing that Innovation Hub. Do you have anything you wanna say as far as related to council priorities that were just adopted, or?
No, my partner does psychological counseling, and it has been since COVID, almost all remote. But She recently rented a unit at Thrive
Oh, cool.
for an hour. So sort of temporary office space for counseling, sounds like.
But I think that goes right into the hub type of
Yeah.
situation, yeah.
Yeah, we could work on them.
Willamette Thrive is right across from the food trucks, and it's a basement space that has been turned into a co-working space. It's small, but it's,
But it's, the concept's there.
yeah, it's beautifully done, so,
But not very well used.
I think by choice. I don't know if Christine is actively
By the
advertising.
owner's choice,
Right.
you mean. Gotcha,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So that's my question, when you're working with all these businesses, do they voice a desire?
Great question, and I think, maybe when we do an event, like if we've asked questions, like I did a small survey when I first started.
Yeah,
And it does come up, it's
Okay.
sort of like
okay.
out there, and also in the early, like, I don't know which person it was, but it was the person in my position years ago. There was a note about creating a co-working space, and then the maker space is sort of mentioned in here. And then we also have a large percentage of home-based businesses. So
Mhm.
yes, I've met with a lot of home-based businesses that are eager to meet each other, and they have a lot to offer. And so the more I'm talking about it, the more it's becoming very clear that this
Yeah.
is just something
Okay.
that, it'd be a very cool project. I think it'd be very much a win for West Linn because it also then can become a tourism asset. But it helps support, them connecting with each other.
Right.
But we don't want to replicate, we can't be a small business development center. So I think maybe one of the things we do is just, we sort of just have a deep dive, and I can maybe bring some examples, or you guys could, maybe I could send you an email in advance, say if you have any, links or ideas, or I could bring somebody to chat about it, but, I don't know, I think it would be good to, if we had something going and we ended up branding it or having a name for it, then it could support these other projects, so, I think it would be great.
So the Chamber of Commerce,
And we would do it in partnership too, because
With the chamber.
I think it's really important to include our other economic development engines.
Yeah.
Historical Willamette also does a lot, and they like to have their autonomy, but they're also interested in being connected. So I think long-term, I know McMinnville, one of the reasons that they've had such success with their tourism and economic development is because their 5 economic groups created a stable table. And ever since I learned about that, I thought, I really want to do that here. And it would mean, like, Shannon Eilis runs a women in business roundtable called Spark Roundtable. You guys are an economic development engine in my mind. We have the Chamber of Commerce, we have Business Recovery Center that I think eventually will be running out of funding. But we have talked about sort of how we can all come together and create, and maybe this is the place to do that. And it just is an opportunity to, but very much important to keep everybody together. You'll meet Shatrine, the executive director for the chamber. She does a lot with the community.
I mean, could she be part of the chamber, be part of this committee?
I think we would want, this committee, this is a citizens committee, but she does come quarterly to provide updates. And we've talked about more and more, how can we support each other? Because, I think chambers have often struggled in the past too. I'd like to modernize it, any ideas there, I think are always welcome too. So anyhow.
I think the only other question I have on this, and I know we're running out of time, is just some clarification. In the 5 years I've been on this committee, it was always the city liaison, Chris, before it was you, that drafted the agenda, asked for chair input. But you're saying here that the chair was not able to draft the agenda, but that was never.
What does this say?
Which
Due
one?
to life.
Oh.
Challenges.
Yeah. What I've
Which
asked,
number?
what I mean by that is when I've asked you to help write the agenda, you don't have anything. I mean, sometimes you'll have an idea, but it's not that there's a specific project that you're driving. It's basically me for bringing my work and you're advising on it. So if we can turn that around and the group is a little bit more clear on the project that we're working on, then I think, and I don't think it's necessarily you have to draft it, so maybe I need to just retool that, but that's my understanding, I think. And I think that this group actually runs a little bit differently than the quasi, I mean, it does run differently than like planning commission or something like that, you know. But
I feel like we would be more effective if we worked on way less each meeting. Like we,
one project.
yeah, one project,
Like
one
we did with
project
the
at a
zoning,
time.
when
Yeah,
we did the zoning for the food trucks.
Yeah.
We worked on that for months.
yeah, I
And,
I feel like
that
maybe
was
we'd be
really-
more productive if we focused on one thing.
So did this committee drive that food truck
That's when
project?
I came onto the committee and they were already discussing it, so I don't know, but they did a lot of going through the zoning and making recommendations, and that lasted for several meetings.
Yeah.
But that's a real, that's a real achievement to.
Yeah, now it's this beautiful thing,
Yeah.
I can't believe we never had it before,
So
so.
it could potentially be cool to drive something like that on Highway 43 as well.
Well, that was the second part of it, and there were recommendations, I think it was finding the location, like maybe where Sourdough Willie's is, and that's where it stopped. And I don't know, it was new to the committee, so I think it just wasn't moving forward.
For the next meeting, I'll really drill down on these three topics, which I think we're pretty clear on, is this sort of really developing the Highway 43 business group. And then opportunities that can come off of that. And then this sort of innovation hub, co-working space concept, I think, you know, we could just talk about that at the next meeting, or, and then we'll be dabbling in the work with John and Chris. And I think those three projects actually all link up too.
Yeah.
So that sounds great. Thank you very much.
Yeah. All right, we have 2 minutes. Do you have someone that's expressed interest?
who wants this job?
Well, Josh said he'd do it if he had more clarity, but I think we have clarity now.
Josh,
Maybe.
you have clarity.
Can you help us build this? Would you still be open to being
Yeah.
chair?
I think you would do a good job.
Thank you.
No, I do, I think you do.
I know
think so
you
too.
did.
It's not her just going, phew, you would do a good job.
Yeah.
We actually.
Well, there is vice chair in here.
Yes. Do you have anyone that's expressed interest?
No. Do you want?
I have for 4 years, so.
Well, Russell's not here, Josh too.
Russell ran, he knew this was
This
coming.
was coming. I think we just vote him in.
Heather, do you want to be vice chair? I don't think you have to really do much unless,
Yeah, tell me what that entails.
it's if Josh is not available, you would run the agenda, but I helped you.
I feel like I get Josh. I think we're on the same page on it.
Okay.
So I can do that.
Okay,
I do turn into bossy big sister if you give me the agenda, so. I'm
okay.
just warning y'all.
No, I think we could, yeah.
We might need that.
I'm a bossy big sister.
No, I think you guys all have really great ideas too, so I think, yeah, feel free to.
Do we have a quorum to be able to vote on this, or?
It's 5, yeah, 5 out of 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess we'll do each one,
Just do an informal.
we'll do it separately. Everyone, you are Josh Carter.
I am.
Okay. I was just about to say Cheney, said no, that's it. Can someone make a motion to approve Josh Carter?
Nominate Josh Carter.
Nominate Josh Carter as the new chair.
I nominate Josh Carter as the new chair.
The second,
You second that?
I will, but I've only just met Josh.
Yeah.
That's true, that is true.
That's very true.
Do you want to run
But on
against
that
him?
instant, I think you're a great guy, so
Thank
yes.
you. I appreciate it.
Okay, everyone in favor, aye.
Aye.
Nays? Okay. Motion has passed. All right.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. It's usually kind of whoever's left standing.
Thanks.
Shannon,
Yeah.
gonna go home and
So I'll return the favor for Heather, right?
There we go.
The motion is to nominate Heather as vice chair.
Second.
And you can second, because you're no longer the chair.
I am no longer the chair. I second it. Everyone in favor? Aye. Any nays? Okay. Congratulations to you both, and 1 minute late, but we officially adjourn. And thank you so much.
Oh, look at that, right on time by
Ta-da.
3 seconds.
Yeah.
How's your roasting on Sunset going?
Well,
You should crap.